Welcome to the Foundation You podcast, a space dedicated to making you the best version of yourself. It really does start with you. I'm your host, Dr. Young Dorn. Today's episode is a little different than my usual conversations and interviews because instead of bringing on a guest, I'm going to share my own personal story. Not many people really know my full story. Pieces of it, maybe, but not the whole picture. And I've gone back and forth about whether to do this, but I also believe that stories create connection. And if I ask other people to be vulnerable here, it felt important at some point for me to do the same. So today I'm sharing my journey, not to blame, not to rehash the past, but to talk about what trauma taught me about love, strength, choosing better. There are parts of my story I've carried quietly for a really long time, not because they aren't important, but because they involve people I love deeply, especially my kids. So today, I want to share my story in a way that honors them, honors my journey, and maybe helps someone else feel less alone in theirs. It's really about telling the truth of what it's like to grow up without emotional safety, to make choices from survival instead of security, and to slowly learn the difference between the two. I was born and raised in Hawaii. It was my home, my whole entire world. When I was around 12 or 13, my mom told me we were going on vacation to New York. I packed like it was a trip. What I didn't know, what my dad didn't know, was that I wasn't coming back. That moment changed my life in many ways that I really couldn't understand at the time. As a child, you don't have language for loss or betrayal or nervous system shock. You just know your whole world was turned upside down overnight. I learned very early that life could change without your consent. And when that happens young, your body remembers, even if your mind doesn't fully understand yet. I had to go back and forth on a plane by myself at such a young age. Back then, there were no cell phones, no way of knowing if I had actually made it miles across the United States all by myself. And honestly, I don't remember much of it. I later learned that I likely blocked parts of it out just so that I could cope. When you grow up without emotional safety, you don't realize you're missing it. You just normalize it. It's what feels familiar. At 17, I moved in with someone much older than me. At the time, it felt like security. It felt like stability. Looking back, I can see it. A young girl looking for protection, structure, and a sense of being taken care for. I didn't have the tools back then to know the difference between love and survival. I did what so many people do. I stayed. I tried harder. I minimized my own needs. And I told myself that this was just what all relationships look like. Then I became a mom. And motherhood has a way of holding up a mirror you can't unsee. There was one moment, where my son, who was very young at the time, repeated words that were being said to me during an argument. Something just clicked in hearing my child mirror that same language back to me. I realized that my kids weren't just watching me. They were learning from me. And in that moment, my fear became smaller than my love for them. I left with my kids and the clothes on our backs, not because I felt strong, but because I loved them more than I was afraid. What followed was one of the hardest seasons of my life, a long custody battle, financial stress, courtrooms, lawyers, uncertainty, the emotional weight of trying to be everything for my kids, while feeling like I was barely holding myself together. And in the middle of that, my mom had a tragic accident on my front steps. I still remember her sitting on the stoop with my daughter, waiting for the ambulance, my mom covered in blood. 24 hours later, she never came out of that coma. Losing my mom in the middle of trying to rebuild my life was a kind of grief that's hard to put into words. It was layered. It was complicated. It was devastating. One of the hardest parts of this journey wasn't something people could see on the outside. Between the parental alienation and the emotional exhaustion, the slow erosion of your sense of self when you're constantly fighting to stay grounded for your kids. In that vulnerable place, I trauma bonded into another very long relationship that never fully progressed into anything. Not because I didn't deserve more, but because my nervous system still thought familiar was healthy. That relationship ended in a way that forced me to finally sit down with a hard truth. I had learned how to survive. I hadn't yet learned how to truly feel safe. Healing didn't come in a single breakthrough. It came with therapy, in uncomfortable realizations, in choosing myself when it felt unfamiliar, in learning how to recognize what I was feeling, sit with those emotions instead of avoiding them. It came in watching my kids grow up and begin to see the truth for themselves, not through bitterness, but through their own clarity. It came in learning that peace feels different than intensity, that consistency feels different than chaos, that safety actually feels peaceful. And eventually it came in allowing myself to understand what it means to be in a healthy relationship, one built on respect, emotional presence, and mutual growth. Here's what I know now that I didn't know then. Trauma doesn't just hurt us. It teaches us what to expect from love. And healing is the process of gently, bravely relearning what love actually looks like. I didn't tell the story to expose anyone. I told it to show what's possible. To show that you can break cycles. You can choose better. You can raise children who have resilience, boundaries, and growth modeled in real time. If my kiddies are listening to this someday, I want them to know this. Everything I did, every hard choice, every move we made, every terrifying step forward, I did for you guys, to show you that you deserve safety, you deserve respect, you deserve healthy love that doesn't hurt. And I'm extremely proud of both of you, not only for what you've accomplished, but for just being good, kind human beings. And if you, the listener, see yourself in any part of this, know this: you are not weak for staying. You are not broken for surviving. You are not too late to choose something better. Healing isn't about erasing your story. It's about letting it become the foundation of who you're becoming. I started this podcast because I believe our stories don't end with what happened to us. They continue with what we choose to build after. A foundation of self-worth, of healthy relationships, of breaking cycles and creating something better for ourselves and for the people we love. If you're listening and you're in the middle of your own rebuilding, I also want you to know this: you are allowed to create a life that feels safer, softer, and more aligned with who you truly are. That's what Foundation You is really all about. It really does start with you. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen and to listen to my story. Take care and tune in to my next podcast. It's gonna be a doozy. See you next time.